Hey, broadcasting live from room 500 of the fucking hotel we're in together.
Yep. What how many hotel rooms do you think you've stayed in over the course of your career?
I mean, it feels like thousands, but it's not thousands for sure. I mean, it's in the I mean, it's in the hundreds. Well, I mean, it might be hell, man. I guess it could be thousands at this point. I don't really think
Yeah.
about that. And dude, the annoying thing about this hotel, the most annoying thing about this hotel so far, which is a great hotel actually, like for what it is, it's actually super nice, is the close button, the close the door button on the elevator doesn't work.
Correct.
And so I get on there and I can hear people coming, and I'm not trying to be a dick. It's just like if they get right there, of course I'm not gonna like not let them on the thing. I'll hold the door for them, but like I can hear people coming and I'm just like hitting things. I don't want to have to make small talk with anybody or like, you know, have you and oh man, it's happened like three different times to me, like
Uh,
where it's like I'm just like frantically trying to hit the button because I don't want to have to talk to anybody and but yeah, it's like super nice place actually. I mean, like I say for what it is, I mean it for what it is, it's really nice.
well, it's
I
like,
didn't expect this.
yeah. Yeah. I think I never pictured this type of hotel downtown somewhere in Ohio. Like I kind of like I don't know if that's not me making fun of Ohio per se, unless it's Cleveland. But
Hmm.
I don't I guess the perception growing up as a kid, like when you do like these hockey tournaments and sports tournaments, my parents would be like, "Oh, we're gonna
Yeah.
stay." They'd always say, "We're gonna stay in the nice part of the city," and like you'd hear
Yeah.
that, be like, you already have this preconceived notion that oh, there's a shitty part of this where we're going, but
Yeah.
we're gonna be in the nice part.
Well, that's kind of like what the clientele here we were talking about that last night. It was so random, just like these random groups of
Uh,
people. And I couldn't really figure out what was going on. I think there's definitely some travel sport families here for sure. That's wild too, man. Travel sports. Like I don't, it's a world that I've not had to pay attention to because I have no children. Um, but from what I understand, it's sort of like getting into a cult, right?
yeah, I mean, you are very much not a professional team, but you have a team of 22 kids with parents driving all around the country paying exorbitant amounts of money for entry fees into a tournament that you only guaranteed maybe 3 games over the course of a weekend.
Right. But
And
yeah,
we walk,
but what I've heard is like you're playing the same teams you always play. You're just playing in like a different place.
oh, we're in Myrtle Beach today. We're going to get them today, boys.
I mean, and was it somebody was talking about how I was watching on ESPN or something, or I was watching. No, it was Barstool. I was watching one of the podcasts on Barstool, just a clip of it, and they were saying that like um, everybody who plays a Little League World Series is like bitching about travel sports because like travel sports is taking all the good players away. Basically, you're not when you're watching the Little League World Series, you're not watching the best players anymore. And the fact that like all of the scouts and stuff who would normally come out to Little League games to try to scout college, prospects and that sort of thing are all going to these travel games now because like that's where the best players are, evidently.
But I mean, the problem I have with that thinking, not yours, but people like that, that's like, well, it's not, no one's making you join that team. Just because the best players supposedly aren't there, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be proud of you making that team that's playing the Little League World Series, right?
Right, for sure. But I don't know how true that is because can't, w- it, I would think that if you're trying to, let's just take baseball, for instance, and I am talking way out of my ass right now because I know nothing about sports in that way, like the insides of sports or especially little league stuff. But it would seem to me that if you are playing little league ball, that you're also playing off-season ball of
You
some sort.
have to be.
So wouldn't the travel sports stuff be in the off-season more than like if you're wanting to do little league stuff, like little league, that official little league and try to get to the little league world series and all that and you're one of the best players, you're probably not playing you're not playing any sort of travel ball during little league time, right?
Right. And travel ball isn't televised at ESPN in prime time, whereas Little League World Series is. So it's like you're kind of like, to your point, why wouldn't you try to do both?
Yeah.
My brother-in-law is
It
actually the lead doctor for Little League World Series this year.
really.
Yeah, we always joke. He's a baseball player. Like
Lots of
it's a great honor.
Lots
But
of kids are gonna die.
oh, for sure, there's a lot of kids leaving with special vehicles. But no, so like it's funny because the joke is always like some of these other countries, like how are these kids 16 years old? They look like they're men.
Right.
And so I'm gonna go through like all like the fine comb like birth certificates to make sure some of these countries are how old they
Dude,
say they are.
and while we're talking about it, how about the Savannah bananas, man? You doing
Yo,
you, dude, like this
I
is
want to
something
see it so bad.
I discovered this last year, and if anyone's not familiar with the Savannah bananas, they're sort of like the Globetrotters of baseball now.
Yeah,
And I lived in Savannah for a couple of years when I was a kid, and the baseball team down there, I think now is called like the Savannah Sand Gnats, or that's what they were called. And all of a sudden, this Savannah Bananas thing popped up on my feed somewhere, and dude, they've completely they have whole totally different rules for baseball. Like fans can protest a call, like. If a fan catches a foul ball, it's an out.
yeah,
There are only 7 innings, right? I think there's 7 innings or 9 innings. It might be. It's a quick game. There's a clock on the like a ridiculously fast clock on the pitcher, like something like 15 seconds or something, 20 seconds, something like that to get the next pitch off. Um, if there are no walks, right? Like if you get a walk, then if the pitcher pitches enough balls and you pitch the fourth ball instead of a walk, the runner can start running the bases, and the ball has to touch all of the players on the defense on the field before they can try to throw them out at base or whatever. It's really interesting, man, and it's a lot of fun. It's very Globetrotters-esque where they're like dancing and having fun,
yeah.
and they kind of play the same team against the same teams. There's the firefighters and the party animals and a few others, right? But the amazing thing is like this is just something that came on my radar last year, and they were just playing in Savannah. That's all they were doing. And now the guy that owns the team is like you can tell he's like super entrepreneur.
Yeah,
Um,
they're
but
international.
what's that?
I think they're gonna go international. They
Yeah,
talked about going to
but
London and stuff like that.
well, they've been traveling around the nation now, and they're selling out National League or selling out Major League ballparks, playing these games like sellouts. And it's unbelievable, man, to watch them like grow and expand and everything. It's because honestly, man, you know what it is? It's just fucking fun. And there's no politics and nobody cares. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be exorbitant salaries, but right now there aren't exorbitant salaries, right? And no one's caught. There's no fantasy teams and all this stuff, and so this serious tinge to sports that I'm just sick of, like I've become sick of, um, is now like gone. And all this is take your family to the ballpark. It's gonna be fun. You're gonna dance. You're gonna laugh. You're gonna, it, it's just fun, and that's
And
all it is.
the guy, some of the one of the pitchers. I mean, the guy could sing share songs in between innings in the crowd, and then still
Right.
throw 87 miles an hour.
So
Like,
that's how I discovered them was that guy. I think it's their second baseman. And I don't remember his name, man. I think his last name's Olson.
yep,
But like he popped up in my feed somewhere, and he's like the super good looking dude. He's obsessed with Taylor Swift, and he like, but dude, they do that. They'll do like TikTok videos on the field or in the middle of a game or something, and you know what, man? It's just the ultimate escapism, and I think that's why something like Live Golf is doing so well now, because Live Golf is not as serious as the PGA Tour. The PGA Tour is serious business, and it's for the serious. We're seriously going to find out who the best golfers are. One of them is not Hawk, by the way. But
he'll hear this too.
but I can drag him right now without him having any comeback. Uh, no, but like Live Golf is like they play music on all the tee boxes. Like there's like pumping like music playing, and the golfers can wear shorts, and the rounds are only and the tournaments are only 3 rounds, and you have team play and 4-man teams and individual play. So the team is winning and the individual is winning, and there aren't as many tournaments, and the money's through the roof. I know I said earlier, it's not these exorbitant salaries, but with the Savannah Bananas, but with Live Golf, man, it's like it's just not as serious. It's like this party atmosphere, and every tournament every live tournament has a party hole. Like that's what it's called, the party hole, where like everyone's just throwing down and they can be loud and obnoxious and like, you know, shout stuff at the players. And man, there's just something about that. Everyone wants to drag these new things that are coming along. And believe me, I'm a traditionalist in a lot of ways. Like I enjoy the majors in golf, like this week is British Open. I enjoy that stuff. I enjoy the kind of the pomp of it and the serious tones. And Kelly and I just went to the U.S. Open at Pinehurst, and I get it. Like there should be traditions, but in our world right now, man, with everything going on and how everyone is just inundated with
Yeah.
the gravity of every moment, it's so nice just to have something stupid, you know? That's why like we talked about this before, why we as a band we don't talk about politics, man. We don't talk about that stuff. It's like it's just music is supposed to heal you and it's supposed to be there if you're angry, sad, whatever. You're
Yeah.
supposed to be able to take something from it and whether it's a show or an album or whatever. And you don't want you don't want people's you know um, you don't want any sort of overtone of that kind of stuff when you're going somewhere to escape something. And so nowadays, when you go to a basketball game or you go to a baseball game or you go to a football game,
It's a
there's
protest.
it's a fucking protest the whole time. You better be, what are we doing today? Oh, today we're solving, today we're curing breast cancer. Tomorrow we're stopping racism, and it's just like those things are important, but fuck, like we get it everywhere else. Like give us something. And look, we all know that professional sports, especially professional sports, is nothing but the Roman Coliseum, right? It's just to keep our minds off of everything else that's going on, like distracted, not off of. And so it's like at least, we're aware enough of what you're doing to know that you want us to look over here and not at you, and that's why that's there to begin with. So at least let us fucking have that,
Right.
you know?
I was talking to an artist a couple weeks ago at a festival, and we were talking. They're not a political band either, but one of the things they always like to do is like bring out the American flag and wave it, and they stopped doing it because he was like he didn't want the flack of people. He goes, the problem in this country today is if you wave the American flag, you're voting Trump. And he goes,
Right.
when that happened, we lost our country because the American flag should be left, right, gay, straight. That's the flag. That's the
Yeah.
one flag we all should die for.
Right.
And the fact that he goes out there and does that and gets messages, oh, you're voting MAGA, or you hate this country, or you're shut down. What do you want? Shut down the border? He goes, it's just not. He goes, he's trying to find the balance between being patriotic and who he is without having to talk to these idiots online that assume the colors of red, white, and blue and the formation with stars, the American flag, does not represent a political party. It's our country. It's
Yeah.
like our country sucks right now with that.
It really does, man. And the thing that's super unfortunate about that is that the people who think that way, who think that like an American flag is a MAGA hat or something, they don't understand that like what that flag represents and the pieces of paper that that flag represents are the things that allow you and me to think of what others would consider absurd things, or to to be gay, to be trans, to be to have whatever, to burn the flag, like whatever that thing is that you want to do. That's why those things exist. There is a symbol of your abilities to be able to live the life you live. And it's so ironic that some people are so programmed to be against that thing. It's like, be careful where you're going, because
Yes.
that thing that you're now like that you hate is the thing that's allowing you. And I know it's a flag. I'm saying it's not the thing, but it's the symbol of the thing. It's the symbol of the sacrifice. It's you know I just I don't understand it, man. I don't get it. Like I do get how people say like this is, like MAGA hats are MAGA hats, and masks are now the MAGA hat for the other side, right? It's like you want to virtue
Right.
signal that like, okay, fine, but not the American flag,
Right.
It's uh I don't know I don't know, man. It's like we should all be patriotic, I guess. There's a video that went viral of a guy, like a reel or a TikTok of a guy who's standing on a beach, and he's a liberal dude, And he's like, I'm a patriot and I love my country, but can I at least come to the beach without these fucking MAGA people flying their flags? And there was a bunch of American flags on the beach, and this guy's pissed about American flags being on the beach. And it's like,
Crazy.
it's like, man, get on board, dude. Like, I don't care what you think. I don't care who you are. I don't care like what your ideology is. That's the thing. It's not as simple of an ideology. You know, I guess if you consider patriotism an ideology, maybe, I guess, but that's not the point, you know?
Yeah. Like every time I see like a flag like wrapped around a tree rug or like caught up in the wind somewhere, or like even going through cemeteries and flags are on the ground and stuff. Like my first inkling is I can't walk by this thing and not
Yeah.
attempt to fix it.
Yeah, my neighbor asked me one day, I have neighbors, my next door neighbor has a flag pole in his front yard. My neighbors across the creek from me in the back, they all fly flags on their docks,
Right.
and they're all super nice people and dude, it's interesting. They're all walks of life too over there. Yeah, especially across the creek, right? And it actually is. It's nice because I know several of them are not conservative or whatever. They still fly flags, and that's awesome. But they ask me why I don't like, and not in a critical way, like, oh, why don't you fly a flag on your dock? And it's because I can't keep up with it 24/7. And like, I've seen, not saying like this in a bad way, but I've seen some of their flags get wrapped around, or like they'll leave them out during the rain or at night
Yeah.
without a light on it. And I'm like very much about like how you're supposed to treat the
Yeah.
flag. If you're gonna fly it at night, you have to have a spotlight on it. If it's gonna, you're supposed to bring it in, did you bring it in during the rain, right? Or is it not? I don't remember that one. But anyway,
Yeah.
but like they get wrapped around and all screwed up, and I'm just like, I don't have time to keep up with that. And it's not that I'm not proud of it. I just, you know.
Yeah.
I'd come out 3 days later and it'd be on the ground or something, and I'd feel terrible,
Right. It's a
So,
bird nest now. Right.
but I think, man, I think one thing that comes with this is I do have to think about this is perspectives, right? And not that I'm condoning disrespecting the flag or disrespecting our country. I'm not condoning that, but I do have to think about the fact that the households that you and I both grew up in, like I grew up in a military household where it was reverence for those things,
Yeah.
and um, because we were actively living the sacrifice, so to speak. My father was, and his father had done so, and my mother's father, and um, so you're sort of taught. Then I was in Boy Scouts as well, and you're taught that in Boy Scouts how to treat the flag and what to do with it, and um, and a lot of people don't have that sort of thing, right? Like they don't have that sort of upbringing. I mean, they might grow up in a fatherless household or in a parentless household or in a household where, it's super latchkey. And I mean, I was sort of latchkey when I was a kid, but not, you know, my parents cared, right? And so there are people that grow up and they don't understand it. And um there could be, I'm not saying always the case, but there could be some jealousy involved in it where like they see these what they consider privileged people who care about the flag because they had a nuclear family and all of
Right.
this stuff, and they didn't have that. So that's always the sign of the mark of the beast, right? Like, I'm jealous of this. I didn't have what you had, so fuck that thing and fuck what it stands for. And you know so that I mean, again, man, I really do, like, I'm not saying I don't have moments of, I'm not like, I'm not a fucking monk. Like, I don't have these moments. I'm not uh immune to getting triggered by things. But I really do try to think about, the uh having empathy, or like trying to see all sides, man, when I think about people, because at the end of the day, man, they are your fellow countrymen, and they are people who live in this country, and they have a vote and they have rights, just like they're not any more important than I am,
Right.
when it comes to what the Constitution says and what their rights are. And so I try to sort of diagnose or figure out why people might think and feel the way they do. And I do have to remind myself that, like, why I'm not a proponent of white privilege, or like I don't believe in, like, you have white privilege, or I do believe in financial privilege. Like, that's a real thing, right? Some people grow up better financially or whatever. But I do have to realize that I did, you know, my privilege was that I had a nuclear family, and that I was raised with these certain set of values, and not everybody is like that, you know?
Right.
So, um, I guess sometimes like the unfortunate part of that is like not everybody else thinks the other way. Like they don't really, you know, I'm just, maybe because I had those things coming up that I'm just, viewed as an asshole or something
Yeah.
by some
No,
people.
you.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, you are for sure.
Yeah.
What?
1000%.
I know we had the assassination attempt. I mean, there's been a lot that's actually happened the last since last episode 21, but
Yeah, man.
we can't talk. I don't want to talk too much about it just because it's super sensitive. But like it's just crazy that when that came across the news ticker, it's like normally when you see that, you're like, oh, it's a third world country or a country that's known to have like overthrows and government collapses and stuff,
Yeah.
and we obviously we have had our fair share of assassinations here in the States, but it's just so sad that our country's to the point now where it's like that could happen or is allowed to happen. It's just
Well,
like wild to me.
yeah, I mean, look, I don't, you and I talked a few weeks ago about how
Yes.
stuff's coming and it's going to be look like an accident. It's probably not an accident. And this is one of those things where like, man, there's just, look, I know
Yeah.
you personally can't talk about a lot of stuff. And that's why we probably need to stay away from this as much as we can. Um, but I don't think that there was anything accidental about it. I don't think that it was a lone gunman. There's just too much going on, and I'm not like being super conspiratorial about this. Like there's just evidence of the fact that like this was sort of allowed to happen, and if not allowed to happen, uh, uh, actively pursued,
Yeah.
to have happened.
Right.
Um, and that sucks, man, because and look, I don't care who it is, man. Like I don't, no one, right, left, center, whatever deserves that, deserves to be assassinated, man. And no one should be cheering for it, for anyone to be, um, you know, to be
Right.
to be assassinated. I mean that, and well, this is the first one in the state since Reagan, right? The first attempt that I mean that was actively carried out. I'm sure there have been
Yes.
other attempts
Yeah.
that have
Yeah.
been
No.
thwarted and you know attempts that have been thwarted and things that have been found and put down before when we'll never know. But like publicly, like actually something happening,
This is
and
the yeah. This is the first one that was happened in a public light like this. In the first rally, which coincidentally enough was fully shown by CNN and all the networks, but they
yeah,
haven't shown a single rally
that it was the
all
only
year for him.
it was
Kind
the
of weird.
only it was the only this is what I mean about this wasn't an accident. It was the only rally that was carried live by any of the networks ever. Why this
Right.
one in Pennsylvania, right? This weird, kind of smaller one, you
Correct.
know, that this just sort of off the beaten path and I mean, just dude, the shorting the stocks thing. Did you see that? Where, uh,
Wild.
yeah, like there was a company that shorted 12 million shares of Truth Social and like an another Trump property prior to.
Yep.
Um, and I don't know if people know what shorting a stock is, but it's I'm going to give a terrible musician explanation of this, but basically, shorting a stock is where someone holds a stock in something, let's say a single stock in Truth Social, and I go, "Hey, let me borrow that stock from you," and so they borrow the stock. Let's say, John, hypothetically, you have one stock, one share of Truth Social, and I ask you to borrow that, so you loan it to me, right? Then I sell it to um I sell it to Barry for uh for $1, right? And then let's and God, that was a terrible explanation. Basically, you're betting that the stock is going to lose value. So
Right.
therefore, I'm going to then once that stock loses value, um I'm going to be able to buy it back from pennies on the dollar and then give you back your stock and I keep the money that I made off of that, if that makes any sense at all. So anyway, uh, this is why I'm not a financial advisor and I play bass for a living. But there was these stocks, this massive company shorted Trump
Yeah.
stocks like the day before, betting that they would drop value. And then that could be an odd coincidence. I'm not saying that's part of this,
I highly doubt it, but
but there are other things going on, man. Like there's video that shows people on top of the water tower. There's this strange woman that's behind Trump that's just filming everything and not ducking. Um, yeah. And the thing that makes me really upset about all of this, man, like the thing that I've been thinking the most about is that gentleman who lost his life in front of his family that no one's talking about. Um, he was a um,
firefighter.
he was a fire chief, right? Ex-fire chief. And he had his wife and kids, two kids at this thing. He was behind Trump on the bleachers and he's sort of out of view. You can't see it, but um, man, it's really haunting when like you hear those shots go off and then there's a short delay and then you hear this woman screaming, and I believe that's his wife screaming
Yeah,
because her husband has just been shot in the head in front of her, his whole protecting his family. And you know, like this guy's just like treated like he's some casualty of war, no one's really talking about it. It's just like this expendable human being that
yeah,
that I mean, how terrible is that, man? Like in front of your family, and now this family
patriarch.
doesn't have their person anymore. I think about me and Kelly, man. Like, what if that were her that got shot in front of me? Like that is such a terrible thought, and no one's talking about this. No one's acknowledging it really. No one on the news, no one talks about this guy. I haven't really seen much posted online about it. Everyone's worried about Trump's ear, which is it's I mean, look, man, it's the man was within inches of having pink mist come out of the back of his head on live television. I mean, it really is
Right,
amazing that but again, man, I remember when Obama was president and I would hear people on the right say things like, "Oh man, someone should just assassinate that guy." And it's like, no, no, man. Like
right,
no one, should be assassinated at all. And, because back to that flag, man, that's not what the flag is about. That's not what our country is about. Look, I realize that our politicians, the Bushes and the Obamas and the Clintons, and they're all responsible for a lot of needless death around the world. And they really don't seem to care. I get it. Like I get that part. As far as I'm concerned, they're pretty evil people.
right.
Not even pretty. They're evil, right? Um, Obama with his drone strike, he killed a couple of innocent Americans in a drone strike, just frivolously overseas, and he's never been prosecuted for that, or no one really talks about it. It is just Barack being Barack, um, and all that stuff's awful. But I feel like that look, man, they probably will never be brought to any sort and Bush with the Iraq war and just going over there for oil or for money or for whatever it is to so Halliburton can make shit tons of money and their stock can rise.
Right.
And killing innocent people for that in the millions. um these people will never see any sort of justice here on earth, but I promise you there will be justice later. It's not yours or my job to, not that we would, but just speaking, hypothetically, it's no one else's job to take those people out, you know.
Right.
Um, it's just not how we do things. And but man, the rhetoric around Trump is really what I think caused this. And I mean, I'm not saying that again, why people are okay with it. Like you're seeing people like, oh, all the bad comments about like, oh, I can't believe they missed, or what the fuck, we were this close, and it's like that comes from people spouting bullshit that's not really true. Like Trump is literally Hitler, or Trump is going to put gay people in camps, or Trump is going to deport every immigrant. And it's like, he's already been president for 4 years. And were you in a camp? Were you deported? No, because he can't do those things. Those
Right.
things are constitutionally impossible, you know?
Right.
And, if you were a citizen of this country, you have rights, especially, and here's the thing that is just so mind-bogglingly uh, uh, short-sighted to me about the fact that like they don't teach civics anymore. They don't teach our government to kids anymore. And kids don't understand that, like, and I'm calling them kids because I'm old now, but they don't understand that the federal government has very little to do with your daily life. Like, if the states' rights and local government and state government really control your life. And so, you know, Trump could say whatever he wants. He could executive order whatever he wants to executive order, which I think is a horrible thing for presidents to be able to do anyway. I don't care if I agree with them or not. Being able to have an executive order for this and an executive order for that is not healthy. I'm not voting for a king, you know.
Right.
Um, but they can send down whatever executive orders they want, and the states can go, "No, we're not doing that." You know, just like what you saw with COVID. Biden sending down all this stuff. I'm signing an executive order to, close schools or this and that, and then Florida going, "Nah, we're not. Sorry, that's not what we're doing." And your city can do that to your state. You
Right.
know, so this whole idea that a politician can ruin democracy or can put gay people in camps or can again round up all of the minorities, and it's not possible and it's not going to happen. But this is the rhetoric that gets thrown around by the media. Like the news media is literally, you know, putting forward these ideas that can't happen,
Right.
and scaring people into thinking that this is what's going to happen. You know, most of the time when anyone is spouting off rhetoric that sounds, unhinged, just start asking them questions. Like, where did you come up with that? Why do you feel that way? What makes you think that? Where did you hear that? Give me an example. And 9 times out of 10, they can't give you an example. They don't know why. The only thing is they've heard a bunch of people say it. And so this rhetoric is what has made people okay with things like assassination. And it's scary that we're becoming numb to it, because going forward, this is still going to be a thing. There's still going to be rhetoric around the politicians or around the anyone that doesn't fall in line with the status quo can be labeled as whatever they want to label them as, and that becomes dangerous hate, man, that can result in deaths and has resulted in deaths now. Not the death of Trump, but the death of this gentleman. And now this family doesn't have a father probably because of a bunch of rhetoric,
Right.
ultimately. I mean, because even if this was a setup thing, that kid who was set up to pull the trigger, who was part of this, right? I'm not saying he was, that probably a patsy, somebody that was, it's always a loner. It's always somebody they can manipulate and control mentally. It probably had a lot to do with rhetoric.
Well, I think we always start this podcast with, "Hey, we're just a bunch of imbeciles talking about whatever. Do your own research." I
Yeah.
have a problem with people that go on X or whatever, like they hear something from a source or a news station, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is the word. This is it. This is the truth. Trump is Hitler.
Yep.
He's a article or what's that new thing they're saying now? Something 25 or whatever that.
Project
Yeah.
2025.
So it's like all this stuff where it's like, dude, you're just hearing Joey Behar tell you something, and you think that's fact. It's so frustrating to me. No one
Well,
actually thinks on their own.
Well, again, man, you can look at it both ways too. Like the same way that that Project 2025 is something for people to be scared of. I mean, coming from both sides. Coming from the right, it's what is it, the 2030 project or something, right? Where we're all going to be in 2035 project, where we're all going to be driving electric cars and living in 15-minute cities, and the World Economic Forum wants, and look, this is stuff that I've looked into, and some of it's been said, but it's been said by people who are not in government. And again, man, it's like you know, let's take it back to Savannah Bananas. We're all so sick of purposely being made to worry about things that it's just the thing of the day to worry about. And if I can make you worry enough about it, you'll be unhappy, and you can be controlled at that point, because the more unhappy you are, the more you need government to fix your problems. you know and that's the other thing, man, is people who view government as the solution to problems. It's the cause of the problems. It's never the solution. All of the great solutions that we've ever had throughout time have been private sector solutions to problems. you know
Right.
Not, the government doesn't make anything, other than war. It makes war.
Right.
That's about it. And rules. Those are the two things it does. It makes war and rules. Uh, and so, my life shit. So government come save me is like the worst fucking thing ever. And that's how we arrive in these places of being controlled as a populace, as a mass. I'm not saying everyone is controlled by it, but in mass, it's like, you know, it's think about the government as like sort of like Pfizer, right? It's like I got to keep you miserable to keep selling you medication.
Right.
If you're healthy, I can't sell you medication. I got to keep you sick. And our governments around the world are the they're peddling the problem and the solution all at the same time, you know? So, the look, man, I'm just really glad that for our country's sake that Trump wasn't assassinated, because that really could have led down a chaotic path,
Yeah.
you know. Um, some people say civil war. I don't know if Americans don't have the stomach for a civil war. Like everyone wants to say, oh, it'd be civil war. That's been the new thing. And it's like we like our lattes and cell phones too much for civil war, man. Like no one's gonna go,
Yeah.
there's not gonna be a civil war.
You're
I'm not gonna say there wouldn't be factions of people out there who wouldn't march in the streets and that kind of thing, but it's like at the end of the day, it's the reason why the summer of 2020 didn't last forever, right? It eventually wore off because it's like, now I want to get back to my,
Wi-Fi.
let's get back to, yeah, let's get back to like civilization, right? We're too comfortable for civil war, because civil war would mean all this comfortable shit goes away and we're all shooting at each other, basically.
Right.
Or worried about being shot or bombed or whatever. I'm not gonna say there wouldn't be, but it would have led to a lot of chaos and a lot more division, man. And we don't need that. In fact, right now, man, I feel like is like this assassination attempt really is something that we can all unite around. Like let's just all agree that it's a fucking shitty thing and should never have even been a thing that would happen and should never happen. Like we shouldn't want that for anybody. I don't want that for Biden. I don't want that for, dude, you talk about someone I detest. I think about two people. Like I think, who do you detest most in the government? And neither one of these people really have any. I mean, I guess they really do it. Sort of at the end of the day, have any bearing on my life. But Nancy Pelosi is one of them. Like I detest. Like you talk about. Like if you look up shit, terrible human being politician in the dictionary, and she should be the first thing that fucking pops up. Maxine Waters is another one, right? Like
Oh yeah.
these are just awful human beings, right? I don't wish death on either of them, and I never would. I don't want to see them shot. I don't want to see them poisoned. I don't want to see
Right.
them taken out. Like, so we should all agree that that is off the table and should be, you know, we should all celebrate the fact that no one that a uh you know someone running for office was not killed on live television. Instead of, we should instead of the opposite. I would love to think that's something we could all unite behind and go, yeah, that's probably like it's probably not something we should have been, we should ever be happy about.
Right. What's not to wildly change the subject, but we were talking last night. The you said you had some cool stuff to talk about Antarctica you were researching.
Well, I wasn't researching. I watched a podcast. I guess that is researching, so to speak. Um, yeah, man, I watched this guy. Uh, oh God, what's this guy's name? I'm gonna get this wrong. Jason Giorgiano. It's all J's and not G's. Jason Giorgiano, I think is his name, or something like Giorgiano. Um, he has these wild. It's not really wild if you think about it. These he talks about the singularity coming with AI, right? Where we've been trying to solve all these problems with science about um, all these physics problems and propulsion problems and um, time travel problems and what's possible and what's not. And he seems to think this is what he posits, that we're coming in the next 30 years into the singularity where AI will become so powerful that it will solve all of these problems for us, right? And basically, as he puts it, every Tom, Dick, and Harry can have a time machine in their garage, basically.
Okay.
And that hypothetically, say that happens, the government would want to keep that so Tom, Dick, and Harry don't have a time machine in their because the implications are are universe ruining, right? Or
Right.
space time ruining. Um, so the government would hang on to those things for themselves. Um, but that has already so but if you think about the fact that that's the future, well, that's already happened, right? So all of the aliens and UFOs that we see, not all of them, one faction of those, he's saying these aliens that everyone says are the Nordics. They look like tall, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, you know, beings that Travis yeah, Fire in the Sky, Travis Walton.
Griswold, yeah.
Yeah, he talks about that when his abduction, he saw the Greys, but he also saw these Nordic human-looking people, right? And that the Greys are like, and I've heard this from Dr. Greer too, that the Greys aren't biological, that they're more like kind of cyborg sort of beings. They're not really biological, and they sort of serve these Nordics, right? And then you can look this stuff up. I mean, I sound like I'm spitting shit out of my ass right now, but like this is like stuff that people have been talking about with UFOs and alien abduction for a while. But that let's say that singularity happens in 2045 or 2050 or whatever. Um, then certain people could go back in time. And that's what we're seeing as the gods of Olympus, right? Like Zeus and all of that, or Anubis and all of the Greek, rather, all of the Egyptian gods were these time travelers that went back in time and made themselves gods. Um, but that he feels like that basically their base of operations was Antarctica, because there's some evidence. I'm not saying there's, again, I'm repeating what he said, that where would you want to be on Earth to stay out of the way, basically out of the way of civilization, let civilization, you know, uh, 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 move, but you're engineering civilization at this point. This is the point. Like people, so think about like you and me, people that are not far removed from you and me, maybe a generation or two, maybe not even two, removed from you and me in the future, are going back in time and engineering society the way they wanted engineered. So it's possible that every day that you and I wake up, and I'm saying this, he didn't say this, but it's possible that every day that you and I wake up, we're in a different reality than we were in yesterday. Like yesterday, I wasn't the bass player in Shinedown. You weren't, like maybe you weren't here. Maybe I wasn't here. But now, because they've engineered something yesterday or 10 days ago or whatever, now we're in this reality. It's very weird to think about.
Right.
But and we wouldn't know any different, because when the reality shifts, all of our memories are there and they're what they always were, and we're just in a new place, right? We don't know any different. But that these beings, these people, not aliens, not anything, went back and have been engineering society to their liking, and that's why all the wars and and but anyway, where would you want your base of operations to stay enough out of the way when you're not poking your finger into things that, it'd be Antarctica, right? I mean, but the interesting thing that he talks about is that the way the poles shift on Earth is that the poles can shift by, and it's been proven throughout time that the poles have been off by, 3,000 kilometers one way or the other, right? And what's interesting about Antarctica is that if that shift happened, that the side of Antarctica that sort of faces where Argentina is, so to speak, um, was tilted to be right about where Argentina is now, back in you know thousands and thousands of years ago, and that as it worked its way back down, it refroze. And what leads them to think that is that on one side of Antarctica, you'd think that in Antarctica the ice would be thickest maybe in the center, or evenly dispersed, but it's not. It's thicker on one edge than on the other edge, even though the temperatures are all the same. And it leads to the thought that like maybe it was tilted this way, and so this side of Antarctica was just, had like more Argentina type weather for a while, and then when the poles shifted again, that refroze, but it's not as thick as the ice is over on this side. Um, so, and also the fact that like the Perry Reese map exists that shows, these are ancient maps that exist that show the edge of Antarctica as if it didn't have any ice on it, like what's underneath the ice. Like we have maps that were drawn a long time ago that show this. So there's evidence that that part of Antarctica wasn't frozen at one point. Um, so anyway, he seems to think and he's positing that, and this is still going on, right? This engineering is still going on, and uh, and that these beings are controlling our governments and stuff, like, you know, controlling
Right.
the wars and whatnot. Um, it's really interesting. It was on the Danny Jones podcast. Um, Jason Giorgiano, I can't remember his name. This is terrible. Um,
I'm trying to look up like the population stuff. Antarctica is so wildly crazy. So the population of Antarctica varies each season, with around 5,000 people in the summer and 1,000 in the winter.
but we're not allowed to go there. Like, by the way, like Antarctica is, and this leads in, so you would think about like the fact that these, if this were the case, we're just talking hypotheticals here, but let's hypothetically say that these Nordic looking beings, people, not beings, people, have been engineering humanity. They've gone back in time and they've been engineering humanity going forward. Um, that you would think that they would be in touch with all of our governments and they would have deals worked out because they have the technology to destroy or to do whatever they want to do. So you would think that it would make sense if this is the case that these entities have sat down with our presidents and world leaders and they're like, you're going to do what we want you to do or else. And if you think about how crazy the world is and how it never makes sense, like it never makes sense. Like what's going on right now, it makes no sense to me. The world we live in right now, and it does. It feels like we woke up one day and the world was different, right?
Right.
And that like nothing makes. There's no common sense, and it's like, well, if you look at it from the view of like, why are these people, these leaders always seem to be doing things that are counterintuitive to the best interest of everyone, and it's like, unless they're being controlled by something or
Right.
someone. What he did say was interesting too is to speak to the and he actually talks about Chris Bledsoe a bit. Um, the thing about this guy Jason Giorgiano, I think his last name is Giorgiano, um, or Giorgiani. Anyway, I'll get it right one of these days. But he's very condescending. He's very academia, very like I'm smarter than you, which is a little off-putting. But he's talking about the Bledsoe thing and like how there is this other interdimensional sort of or alien thing going on too with like these like what Bledsoe talks about, these orbs that can turn into beings and back into orbs and that's a different thing than the people who are flying these the craft that you see that look like they were built, rather than orbs and things like that. So it's just a really interesting concept. The one thing I didn't dig about it is he's talking about, well, this is the basis for all of our religions all the way through time, and which look, man, makes it does make a lot of rational sense if that's the case. That these people who are trying, I keep saying entities, these people who are trying to control and engineer humanity, would be the ones who we see as gods, whether it's like I say, Zeus or Anubis or Buddha or Jesus or
Yeah.
whatever. The Ark of the Covenant makes a lot of sense at that point. When you think about the fact that like it was possibly a technological weapon of some sort that was carried through the desert. The fact that the Israelites were guided through the desert by a cloud by day and a pillar of fire at night. So it sounds awful lot like a UFO just kind of guiding them through, you know, parting of the Red Sea. They, was done by this cloud, not really by Moses, right? Um, but what he's asking, what he says is he's like, religion is, belief in God is stupid at that point
Correct.
because of this. But it's like that does not take away from the fact that like what Eric von Daniken said. He said that my God doesn't need a UFO. My God doesn't need a craft. My God is omniscient and everywhere, and the creator of the universe and everything. And it sounded like Douglas Adams, 42, the answer to the universe, creation, and everything. But I'm of the same camp. It's like thinking like this doesn't require me to throw off my belief in God and my faith and everything. It's like um I've seen too much proof of that stuff working, right? And so I feel like sometimes these people have these wild concepts. They get so caught up in their concepts that now they have figured out God, you know? And
Right.
it's like how short-sighted has that been throughout history when people think like, oh, I'm bigger than God. I've got it figured out, you know, or I am God, or you know, God is very small and I am mighty because my brain is, you know, and it's like, man, no, I don't think that's it. You know, there's too much evidence of people. Like again, I talk an awful lot about NDEs and near-death experiences and people seeing and going somewhere else and coming back and going, no, 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 like this isn't it where we are right now. There's more to it, and I think that you know perhaps that's what you know those orb entities or whatever or you know or something spiritual. And we've talked about that. You know,
Yeah.
um, I don't know. That's a pretty roundabout way to talk about Antarctica, but I do find it super interesting. We were talking about Admiral Byrd again last night that he claims that he saw a civilization inside of a hole in Antarctica. This guy was like, again, talk about Admiral Byrd again. This guy was the
Legendary.
one of the most famous people of his time. So it would be the equivalent of who's someone who's like a really well respected public figure, not like sports figure, like very well respected. It's kind of hard to find these days because everything's so polarizing, but someone that everyone can get on board with, right?
Right.
Um, you know, he was as famous as Einstein. You know, he was as famous as Marilyn Monroe. He was as you know, like he was a very famous person, and he's going. He wrote it down in a book, like or in his notes, I guess, that became a book. Like I saw this stuff. Like I went flying, and all of a sudden we were off. We were somewhere where our navigation, you know, our instrument said we shouldn't be. There was a hole in, you know, we flew into this hole in Antarctica, and there was a civilization there. There were buildings and things flying around, and you know, and if you think about, okay, let's just say that this guy Giorgiani. I wish I could. Do you know what his last name? Have you looked it up? I
Uh,
can't. I can't. Here, let me find it because I got to get
yeah.
this right. But let's just say his concept is correct, then Antarctica
Uh,
is the perfect place to. I'll tell you right now who it is. Jason Giorgiani.
Side note, 11 babies have been born in Antarctica, and not one of them have passed away yet. So it is the only country
Hmm.
with the lowest mortality rate of 0%.
Jason Giorgiani. Jorjani. Jason Giorgiani. Danny Jones podcast number 248. It's interesting. And what's the first half of the podcast is really bizarre because he talks about like how he was trying to bring about regime change in Iran and stuff. It's like this guy's got this whole other thing going on too. It's a very weird kind of interesting podcast. But let's just say that hypothetically he's correct. That makes sense that there would still be a civilization there of people from the future who live here right now at this point, engineering what we're doing, also under the oceans. I mean, you know, if you've got a technology, if AI has graced us with the technology to you know go back in time, we can sure as hell survive under the ocean and figure that out, right? And throughout time, there's you know these stories of craft under the water. Um, there are Navy people who speak off the record because it's classified stuff that like they're on submarines and they're pinging craft traveling under the water at hundreds and thousands of miles an hour that then stop in front of the submarine. The submarine takes a base of action to get out of the way, and this thing comes around the back and starts following them, and then takes off at a high rate of speed under the water.
Right.
Like this stuff is documented. I mean, this has actually happened. That's not like fantasy. So, um, you know, Admiral Byrd doesn't look like such an idiot if you look at it through that lens. But um, ultimately, man, at the end of the day, like I feel like I've been on this search for years and years, and I think you have too, of like, what is the actual truth? What is really going on? The world is so bizarre and it gets more and more bizarre. The more that we learn, the more
Yeah.
bizarre it gets, but almost in a not bizarre in like a like we're really figuring it out, like bizarre in like a more chaotic. Like the more that we learn, the more that the thing that's been controlling everything starts getting into its death throes, you know, and it's like lashing out and like doesn't want us to figure this stuff out. Um, But I think I'm kind of the older I get now, I'm kind of getting to a point where it's like, does it really fucking matter at the end of the day? Like no, does it? I mean, does it really matter? Because I'm here on Earth. I'm trying to be happy. I'm trying to be joyful. We've talked about not trying to be happy, but trying to be joyful, trying to find joy in my life, um, playing music for people, living a full life, as full a life as I can live, while being subjected to the whims of government or something controlling government or people whoever's in control of humanity, puppet master shit that we none of us can control or account for. Um, but at the end of the day, should I really fucking care? Because at the end of the day, I just want to eat dinner tonight, play a rock show, get on to the next show so I can get home, hang out with my wife and my dogs, make music. Like at the end of the day, since that's what makes me tick, why do I care so much? You know? And also if I'm strong in my faith, which I'm working on every day,
Yeah.
it shouldn't bother me
Well,
at the end of the day.
so say all the stuff you're talking about, the information control and how come we don't know the stuff like out there. Say tomorrow it all drops, everything from JFK, Bigfoot, UFOs, UAPs, aliens. How much of that, knowing the information now, would that affect your life? And now, would your mind or brain tell you to start looking for something else now?
No, I don't think so. Like you could literally, we could have full disclosure,
Of
like
everything, yes,
honest disclosure,
yes,
honest disclosure. Um, and I wouldn't live my life any differently. I wouldn't want to do anything else. The only thing that would weird me out and that I wouldn't believe is if they said, "Oh yeah, and God doesn't exist." And because again, man, there is too much perfection in the world for me not to believe that, and also my personal experiences to believe that there's not something else beyond this, that this life we're living right now is just some I've said it for like a test or something,
right,
something we're supposed to go through. Um, what to that point, man, and this might seem kind of weird, but I've been sort of thought experimenting this thing of like, but hypothetically, let's say Earth is a test, right? But what if the test is always the same? Meaning that everyone who comes to Earth for the test, all this, whoever the spirit that is Eric Bass that embodies this, that that's inside of this brain, that's inside of this skeleton, mech skeleton that's got this meat suit on the outside of it, that's experiencing the universe right now. Um, what if the test is always the same timeline, the same test? Like everyone always lives this same time. It's like we have history because we're told we have history, but like everyone who comes here comes during this chaotic period and where like everything's okay and then it's not okay and not okay and okay and not okay. And you have to that ultimately leads up to this singularity of some sort that happens, right? What if like this is the time period that is this is the exam. This is some program that's running that God puts us in to test our metal, to test us to see how we deal with living in such chaotic times. I've heard people say that like say some of these NDE people that come back, it's like, Earth is a classroom. It's a place we choose to be, and we choose to live here during this time. But what if everybody chooses at the same time? Because it's a super fucking interesting time. We've talked about that too, where like how many generations and generations and generations and thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands, well, tens of thousands of years did we ride horses and cultivate land and hunter-gatherer stuff. And then all of a sudden, just now,
yeah,
in the last 100 years, not even 100 years, 80 years, technology just takes off. And it's like, now things get really super interesting. We're living in a way that no one ever lived before, but it doesn't register with us. And maybe this time period is the test. It's like they don't send anybody. No one comes to Earth at any other time but now, because this is the most chaotic, weird time that we're not supposed to be comfortable in. I don't know.
right. Yeah, I'm always curious about that. Like, if, but I know we've talked about the access having too much information, how it would react to like our society today. But I've always been like, I always find I'm more successful the more information I know. Right? I think you
Yeah.
are. Most people should be, but again, everything gets declassified tonight at midnight. Wake up tomorrow. It'd be interesting to be like, I'd have more fun being like, aha, told you, or now we're not so much conspiracy theorists now, are we? Right? But
Well, I think that gets proven every day that like some of the,
yeah,
we're people who think like you and I do a good bit get labeled as conspiracy theorists, and then those things turn out to be true most of the time. A lot of the time, not all the
right.
time, but a lot of the time.
It's almost like that label is placed out there to like distract people from talking about it as they kind of come out with how they're going to release the actual truth of this. And the truth is the conspiracy theory.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yes.
mean, dude, it's well, that's how you shame people into shutting the fuck up. You know, I mean,
Right.
that's what you do. You shame people into you call them a racist. You call it's a very communist
Yeah.
handbook kind of thing.
And it
You know,
works.
label somebody something unsavory and drive that point home to where everyone believes that they're that thing. Again, I will point at Trump. I don't think Donald Trump is a racist. A misogynist, probably at some point in his past, yes. But I think that the older that men get, they get less that way. Um, but I don't think he's a racist, man. I don't think he's literally Hitler. But you've been told that so much. Like, here's a guy who he won like two or three NAACP awards. Like everybody loved him. He had a TV,
Correct.
he had the number one TV show in the nation for like 3 years in a row,
Right.
and nobody hated him, and he wasn't a racist. And but all of a sudden he gets into politics, and he gets he. I want everyone to think about this for a second, because this is if it's not Donald Trump today, it'll be somebody else tomorrow. This is why I always gravitate toward the people that they're telling you to hate, because now this guy walks into politics and he's not on the inside. He's not part of the system. He's been on the periphery. And by the way, they all loved him. The Clintons were at his
Oh,
daughter's wedding.
Al Sharpton. All these,
Yeah,
everyone loved him.
right. They were all friends. And then all of a sudden, he moves in and he's like, he's in danger of exposing what's going on because he's not part of the inside. And then all of a sudden, every Republican and every Democrat in the government starts calling him a racist, starts calling him a sexist, starts trying to find a way to prosecute him, to bring him down, everything else, and now to kill him because
Right.
he's going to take away their way of life, not yours and mine, their way of life, their ability to make money, their ability to launder money through Ukraine, or to insider trade stocks. Now, you know,
Pelosi.
uh, yes, right. All of a sudden, he is person non grata, enemy of the state number one, and he is going to put and this is them talking to the people. He's going to put you all in camps. He's going to ruin our democracy. No, he is going to get in the way of you doing illegal shit. That's what he's going to be in the way of. So, uh, I don't believe these things, man. And it goes both ways, man. When the Republicans tell me something about someone on the other side, and they're that adamant about it. Look, I bought it. I'll tell you what I bought into that came from the right. I bought into Edward Snowden and Julian Assange are evil people. I bought into that because I was told by people that these individuals were against liberty, and they were against our country, and they were enemies of the state because they're spies, and they're turncoats, and they're traitors to their country. It's quite the opposite. And by the way, Assange is not American, so he's not a traitor to his country,
Yeah.
but Snowden is. But Snowden was just going, hey, your government is doing illegal shit behind your back. That's what he was exposing. And the second he exposed that, he was put through the mill, right? Same thing with Assange, man. Assange put out documents that exposed what was going on in Iraq, that exposed the World Economic Forum, that exposed what was really going
Yeah.
on. And
John
and
McAfee.
John McAfee is another one. And you're told that these people are unhinged, dangerous people. They belong in jail. They should be prosecuted. And I bought into that because I was told to think that. And that was years ago. But like you start to realize, like, hang on a second, man. Like these people are actually in the truest sense of the word, like patriots in a way, because they are not even in a way. I mean, I can say that. So I'm saying not saying that Assange is a patriot because he's not American, but
His actions like a Paul Revere, like a warning shot to everyone else in the world, being, "Hey,
Yeah,
man, there's some evil shit going on."
right. And on the right, what was sold to people on the right about Assange was, well, he put soldiers' lives in danger by exposing where they were and what their movements were and blah blah blah. And it's like, but if you now that I look at it, I'm like, no, our government put those soldiers in danger because they were doing basically mercenary work for politicians, you know?
Correct.
And so that's the way that I was fooled by that shit. And I'm asking everybody to when anyone in government starts just telling you how dangerous somebody is, you should probably look into that person from a different angle because what's really going on most of the time, if not all of the time, is that person is dangerous to the politicians. He's dangerous to their way of life, or he or she is dangerous to them in
Yeah.
that way. Not not really dangerous to any sort of liberty or anything. Because
No.
again, man, your liberty is protected by the Constitution of the United States. You know,
Correct.
your freedom of speech, your freedom of religion, your freedom to live with, be with, marry whomever you'd like. You know, when it comes to things like abortion and gay marriage and all of those things, those fall in the states, and the states do whatever they would like to do with that. And that's why we live in the greatest country in the world, because you can, if you're living in South Dakota and you feel like your liberties are being hampered by where you live, move to California and you can have all the liberties you want to have to live the way you want to live. Same goes for someone on the right who maybe lives in California and feels like that things aren't going the way they think they should be going. Move to Texas. You can probably have a more of a life that you want to live there.
Right.
Um, but you're again, people, it again, you're told that like Trump's gonna he's going to disband the government. I mean, I've heard the craziest fucking things. He's going to tear down the Supreme Court. He's going to disband Congress and put in his own. It's like he can't do it, you know.
Right.
And neither can I, and neither can you. And um, but it doesn't mean there aren't evil people out there who try to manipulate things. Yeah, and usually they're lobbyists you know, this deep state thing. Everyone wants to talk about the deep state as a conspiracy theory. Well, it's not. It's like you get these people who become career people in Washington, D.C. that through throwing money around or peddling influence can control unelected people that can control the politics of a country. Um, and they're never voted out. They're always there. They're just eternally there, right? Like that's the real threat at the end of the day.
Well, they don't want
Um,
to let go of that power. That's why, like, I look at the Joe Biden stuff, and it's like, you look at that. If that was our family member up there,
mm.
I would never allow my family member to go out public like that without proper like care. It's like Jill Biden, and I
How,
have my
how,
issues with her because I worked with them for 8 years, and
yeah, you
she's
told me some
not
wild shit. You told me some
she
wild shit about her.
she's not even a real doctor. It's like she's, but my problem with her is that I think she's so, to your point, the idea that politicians get so enamored with the power and prestige that comes with the titles and all the bullshit with that, that the minute that starts leaving your grasp, you'll do anything. It's like you see her kind of march him around at these
Yeah,
events. It's like I feel bad for the guy because, like, dude,
I don't though. I feel I would feel bad if he had been a good, decent human being
well, from
prior
day
to
one,
prior to
correct?
all of this, right?
Yeah,
If you look back,
correct.
look, you want to see a shit human being.
You want to see a
And
racist? A
and again,
racist.
right. And I'm not, and by the way, I'm not sitting here like, again, I remember everything I just said about rhetoric and whatnot. But there is on the record evidence of Joe Biden being a racist, saying racist things, saying horrible things about people, lying about himself, lying about his accomplishments, and tearing people apart. Unfortunately, his first wife and their one of the kids was killed in a car accident,
Yep.
was hit head on by a truck.
Yes.
Joe Biden lied about the truck driver, said the truck driver was drunk, ruined the guy's life because there was no internet. There was no way to really check this stuff. He just went out and stumped about how, when in reality, the truck driver was not drunk at all. And Biden's wife is the one who crossed the center line. Right. But he's just a fucking shit human being. So Doesn't mean that I wish him death, doesn't mean that I wish anything bad on him in that way, but I don't mind watching him have to make a fool of himself at this point because
Right.
he did so many awful things. He got like career politician. I mean, in deep, man, since the 70s. And um,
Yeah,
you know,
the race stuff was so crazy, and then it's just kind of karma lately with like the Supreme Court judge up there now. Um,
yeah.
but it's just like that is someone that has always been that person.
So I personally don't feel bad about watching him have to like just shuffle around the stage. Just like I don't feel bad about watching Pelosi have to shuffle around the stage. Just like I don't feel bad about having to watch Mitch McConnell have a stroke on
Oh,
live TV. Because dude, Mitch McConnell is another shit human
he's
being.
terrible.
Like again, these are career politicians who don't care about you and don't care about me. And I don't mind watching them have mental and physical breakdowns live.
Right.
The fact that they hold the positions they hold, whether there's any control, I don't think they're in control of anything, but whether they hold the positions they hold or not, that's what sucks about it. Because there are good, decent people on all sides. There are great, decent people who are Democrat. There are great, decent people who are Republican who would be much better. Um, we would be much better served having them in those positions. Um,
I think to my point, it's like the problem I have with Jill is that, or and handlers around him, is that they're thinking of family themselves first and country. If I want a leader that goes into a United Nations or a summit or walks into a room full of world leaders, I want them to be able to walk in the room without being their on a leash or being
yeah,
told where to turn. I want
right.
someone to walk in the room and be like, "Holy fuck, America's here!"
Well, it's the appearance of that, right? I mean,
Correct.
the
Yeah.
appearance is terrible, but I mean, it's blatantly obvious right now that Jill Biden is the one who wants to keep Joe
Correct.
Biden as president because she really
Correct.
enjoys this thing, you know. Um,
And obviously Hunter does because he's about to get
well,
so it's like
look, man, I'm about to throw some
ah
I'm about to throw some conspiracy-esque stuff out there, so please, nobody, like I said, please do your own research into this and don't take my word for it, but. My theory on Jill Biden is this. So if you look at Joe Biden, um, just it's really creepy, man. If you look up Joe Biden sniffing children, like there's video upon video upon video of him, like, dude, there's one video where he pinches this little girl's nipple, like I'm saying, like
yeah.
on TV, like he's trying to
Yep.
get away with something. Like he pinches her nipple and sniffs her hair, and she like pulls away, and it's fucking disgusting, man. And then there's his daughter's diary that she has now said that yes, that's my
That's his.
diary
Yep.
that James O'Keefe had for a while. And the there's an entry in that diary where she talks about taking showers with her dad, and she's like, "Was I molested?" And then she says, "Probably, by Joe Biden." So we're talking about a guy whose daughter thinks that he probably molested her. Um, and I don't have any. I've seen one or two things. This is why I'm telling you, please do research because I'm not. But this would make sense to me. I'm just
Right. Yeah.
I'm hypothesizing something here. I saw something where it said that Jill Biden, at one point was the Biden family's babysitter. Now, I don't know this to be true. I'm just again, man. Please,
Yeah.
God, please, like you all. I read this somewhere and I saw a picture. If that's the case, and creepy Joe Biden was the and Jill Biden was the babysitter. Who knows what happened with that? Maybe this is her revenge, man. You know,
Yeah.
maybe this is her revenge of like, because like she does not. To your point, she does not act like a caring wife.
No, she doesn't.
She acts like someone who's got a vendetta against
A
this man
scorned, a scorned
or
lover
a
is gonna
score
prop this motherfucker up
a score to
until
settle,
yes.
right? And I also have been told some things about Jill Biden that by people who know her or have been around her that she's not exactly in love with Joe Biden, if that makes any sense. Like that
Yeah. No.
she's sort of
Yeah.
free, let's just say. She's sort of in a free relationship. Um, so it does, and again, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. The things that I have said are things that I read and looked into, and that you can find as well on the
Right.
internet if you want to look into these things. But she very much acts like someone who is is like you said has a score to settle, and she's like, now's my time because I put up with all this bullshit my whole life with this dude, and now is me, and so
Right,
she's the one not letting him resign.
right.
Because honestly, man, like at the end of the day, people like it is very obvious that he has some level of dementia and it's getting worse. And it's like that's just what it is. Like I've had family members who have had dementia and they act and walk and look just as distant. They walk just as funny. They keep their fists like this and they walk like cornholio, you know, and it is what
Well,
it
Nancy
is.
Reagan was there open about it towards the end of his presidency because it's like they knew,
Yeah.
and like that's probably the last time before this where I saw a world leader deteriorate or see videos of a leader in deterioration mode. But they
Yeah.
did it. They stepped away gracefully and they whatever. But it's like you see this thing now. It's like, I'm just embarrassed.
Yeah.
This guy has the power to have launch. I mean, on paper, yeah. Obviously, they all know he doesn't have the brain capacity to do all that stuff.
Yeah,
But
who do you think like in all seriousness, like so that chain of command is that, and I'm not asking you to give away anything that you actually know. I'm just so don't, you wouldn't. But like, do you think that is that chain of command really that? Like, is the president really part of that chain of command? Or is that just a like the nuclear football and this briefcase they have that has the codes in it, and the president has to enter his codes, and then the Secretary of
I
Defense has to
would,
enter his codes, and like, is the president really part of that chain? Because I think something came out recently where it said that was it Bolton or someone
yeah.
kept the codes from Trump or something like he never gave him the actual codes or something, and so like
Which I don't know if I believe that per se. But to your point, it's almost like the Avengers, where like the president's kind of like Nick Fury, who's like he gathered everyone, but in order to actually do something, you need the whole team to kind of like, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Like you just
no,
can't, one person just can't willingly boom, boom, boom. Like you're never going to be access to that briefcase, cut the guy's arm off, and it's typing codes, and you can start launching shit.
but I guess my question is the president really part of that chain of command, or is it very much like Ringo writing songs for the Beatles, right? Where it's like
Yeah,
it's
no, I
like
mean he's
yeah, it's like yeah, buddy, you're in the Beatles and you can write songs and yeah, it's a great song, Ringo. We'll record it on the next record. Like is it like is he really got any sort of actual say so and control of that part of because honestly, this is a politician who will say and do anything to get elected, who's only in there for 4, possibly 8 years, and then they move on to someone else who is desperate to get in there and will say and do anything to get in there, and and it's just a roll of the dice as to whether or not this person is smart, whether they have morals, like but they probably don't, So are they actually giving that type of destructive any type of destructive control to even if it's just 1/8 of the codes to that person, like at the end
yeah.
of the day.
It's a Sudoku puzzle where they have to solve it. They can launch a missile. Yeah, no, I mean they're part of they have to be part of the chain, but they're not like you can't. Basically, one person just can't decide to launch that. Like obviously, there's checks and balances, right? You just can't go to war. A president just can't wake up tomorrow and be like, "We're going to start a war with Sudan."
Well,
And
they
start
can though these days because through executive order you can
well,
like
executive
it's
order, and
when
to your point, like
when
the
like when I mean like look Trump did there was stuff in Syria, right, where he engaged in Syria, but there was no congressional declaration of war. We just march in and do whatever the president wants at that point. I'm talking about Obama with drone strikes in Afghanistan or drone strikes, and I mean
yeah.
we look, there was never a declaration of war for Afghanistan. Like there was never the Congress, at least to my knowledge, Congress never were going to war with Afghanistan or in Afghanistan against the Taliban. There was never this It was just this sort of like, and now this thing with Ukraine, this proxy war, where it's like, well, we don't have to declare war because we're not at war, but there are Americans on the ground in Ukraine with weapons in their hands, firing those weapons, and yet there is no declaration of war. So
Well, to your point, I mean, the tactical briefcase, if that's what we're actually talking about, the nuclear launch codes.
well, that's where we
There's
started. Yeah.
other world leaders that have access to nuclear launch codes, their own. But the fact that the sheer fact of launching one of those, or the threat of launching one of those, would drastically affect everyone's life on this planet. So it's like that's why I get when people have the threat like, "Oh, I'm gonna launch nukes," and like no one weapons of mass destruction, which was all bullshit. So all this stuff where you're kind of like, what's the point of having those aren't ever going to be launched. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like if you launch that, you are a leader that's dying, your family's dead, you don't give a fuck anymore, and fuck the rest of this world. It is
Well, that's what
crazy if some of these world leaders are, or we're being told to believe they are. They're not that crazy. Why would they do that?
I mean. That's something that we're being. And again, man, like I really am kind of at a point in my adult political thinking life where I don't know who to believe or what to believe is true, right? I just have to sort of form my own opinions about things. And I look at someone like Putin, and we are told again, we are told that Putin is evil. He is, and so that causes me to go, let me really look into this situation. And I'm not saying that him marching into Ukraine was the right thing to do. Don't get me wrong, but we have NATO and the United States have been actively doing things to Russia that we said we would never do. We promised we'd never do. We'd never have NATO countries right on Russia's border, which we
Correct.
now do. We would never march missiles right to their border
Which
in
we
NATO
have.
countries, which we do, which we've done. So if you're Putin and you're looking at this thing, you're going, it's basically Putin's Cuban Missile Crisis, right? Where like we had the Cuban Missile because Russia was putting missiles in Cuba right on our doorstep. Well, we didn't like that. That was okay. That was rah rah, way to go JFK. But here's Putin kind of going, hey, you're marching these things right up to my doorstep. So we're being told now that Putin is a loose cannon with nukes, and that that like if you push Putin far enough, that he's so patriotic about Russia. If Russia can't exist, nothing should exist. That's how he thinks. And he would not think twice about launching nukes. And people in his government have said such, like we'll launch nukes. And I think that's a lot of, again, as I'm looking at it, I'm looking at it this through I've been I've been looking at a lot of this stuff through Putin's eyes, at least the best I can to understand it. And I'm not saying he's a great person. He's probably killed a lot of people, and he's in his government. He holds on to power. He's basically a dictator.
Yeah.
Um, but he has children, he has family. Um, and I'm not saying that he's not some maniacal person either. Like that he would obviously I just said he's probably had people killed. Obviously he's
Well,
maniacal.
before he became a
But
world leader, he was in a career path that
KGB, right?
correct. So
Yeah.
to your point, yes.
But is he does he really want to like launch nukes knowing that it would instantly destroy the rest of the world because we're going to launch back at them and destroy the world just because Russia? I don't think so, man. I think that at some point
Correct.
I have to believe that, and it's a dangerous thing to believe because as we've talked before, most politicians are at least sociopaths, if not psychopaths. Um, but in somewhere in there is a kernel of humanity that goes, you know, I don't want my family to go through this, or I don't want to put my children through
Correct.
this, or but then look at Stalin. Stalin killed his kids. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe
Kim
I'm wrong
Jong
about
Un
that.
killed his brother and cousin, so it's like, yeah,
Yeah. So maybe I'm way off base. But I would think that with someone like Putin who's been on the world stage as much as he had and has, and seems to have surface level humanity going on. I don't know. Um,
like
but
you never hear like people always say, oh, he's got state sense or state sponsored media, which
so do
time.
we.
Thank you. So I'm always curious. Like you never really hear of like people in this cabinet or athletes or musicians or actors or the global stage playing this everywhere, and you never hear them badmouth him though. Unless is there a fear? Like
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a can't talk bad about our thing, and it's like I don't want this to come off as wildly insane, but I'm okay with our own athletes and people and whoever having their thoughts about, man, I don't like him as a president, but go back to the beginning, it's still our person and have a
Hmm.
sense of pride that, okay, he might not be working out right now. I got 4 years to got to get him out of here, or I'm going to campaign. I'm going to do all the stuff I'm allowed to do with my town halls and stuff.
Yep.
Do all that, but at the end of the day, these people that go on X and Twitter say "fuck my president," or fuck, no matter what side you're on, it's like, dude, it's so embarrassing. These other countries are so like prideful of where they're from.
Yes.
It's I don't maybe not explain that right, because it's like you look at
Well,
I have a
we're sorry, go ahead.
like you look at some of these Australia during the pandemic and how fucked up they did down there. But the athletes, I've been watching these documentary series like the swimming team now, it's the Summer Olympics. Australians are always have a great team, and some of the questions are talking about how tough it was to go through training. But while they didn't agree with how leadership ran the COVID and stuff like that a couple of years ago, they're still proud to be Australians. I was kind of like, you know what? Why can't we be that way?
Well,
It's like we're so decisive.
well, you're taking it back around to the beginning of our conversation is because, um, you know, being a patriot in the United States now has become like some sort of weird racial issue and everything else. Like if you have an American flag in your yard, then you're an alt-right racist, and it's if you have pride in your country that you're alt-right, right wing, like you've been labeled as that. And look, man, I'm not alt-right, I'm not racist, I'm not any of this stuff. But if that's what you have to call me because I fly an American
Right.
flag, then so be it. But that's why we can't have that. Um, we are. Look, I forget who it was that said this, but it could have been it could have been the Russians, it could have been the Chinese, but they talk about tearing down America from within because America will never get past its original sin of slavery, right?
Right.
Like they use that as a wedge to divide Americans. Everyone uses that as a wedge to divide Americans. Where, look, Australia has the same thing with the Aboriginal people.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's all sorts, that in the same way that America treated the Native Americans, that's the same way the Australians have treated the indigenous people there. Um, Yet that's not used as a wedge to divide Australians. I'm sure there is tension there, and I know historically there is. Um, but we're not, we are basically not allowed to forget our original sin, and we're constantly reminded of it, and we're constantly looked at. We've been told to look at ourselves through that lens, right? And this is a new thing. This has come on with the millennial generation, not my generation. My generation was taught don't look at color. We're fine. Everybody's and I did. I grew up in a great time where everyone was getting along, and we were told to unite and be united. And I talked before on the podcast about there was a company called Cross Colors when I was in high school that made the t-shirts had uh, Confederate flags on them, but they were in the African colors, green, red, and black. And all the
Yeah.
black kids would wear these shirts with the Confederate flag and these different, and it was like, I don't know, man. It was just a different time. It was just a different time. And uh, now we are being told that any sense of pride that we have is it's funny how that word, right? When the word pride applies to gay pride or racial pride, for oh man, I have so much pride in where I'm from, and I have so much pride in my ethnicity, and I have so much pride in my gayness, but if you say
To the
that
flag.
but that goes for everybody but people who have pride in the country who happen to be white, because then at that point you're a white nationalist and
Right.
you're a fucking terrible person. Um, so you're not allowed to have that kind of pride, right? Um, so I don't know, man. I just think that that's why we can't have that. We can't have that sort of we can't have national pride because national pride is associated with racism in the United States, and that's unfortunate. It's associated with bigotry and all of these other things, and because honestly, man, at the end of the day, it's easy it's easy to push if you're someone who's trying to push that narrative and drive America down. It's easy to push the trope of the Alabama trailer park racist guy who loves America. It's a really easy trope to get to it's toilet humor, right? Um, and it's an easy it's how, like, when you hear these super snooty snobby coastal elites talk about Trump supporters, that's what they put forth, right? It's like, oh, it's they're in the trailer park and they're just typical, and it's you know um so that keeps everyone from uniting behind the flag and behind our country and being just united as Americans. It's like I'm with you, man. Like I don't like Joe Biden, but at the end of the day, he's my president right now, even though I didn't vote for him. And
Right,
I don't have to like everything he does. I don't like everything Trump does. I don't have to like everything you do
right.
to just go, okay, this is what it is, and I can vote differently next time, and that's what my superpower is. That's the only thing I've got.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, man, I wish that unfortunately it will really take some tragic thing to happen to unite our country again, whether that comes from within, like, I mean, again, we've talked about, I don't know, every day I feel like I go more and more toward the fact that 9/11 wasn't a terrorist attack. It was probably an organized thing, an
yeah,
engineered thing. Um, but whether it's something like that or a nuclear warhead goes off somewhere, or a chemical attack of some sort, or something that happens that unites Americans again,
yeah.
unfortunately,
A cyber
unfortunately,
attack that shuts down everything.
yeah, unfortunately, it's going to take something like that to bring people together. But hopefully, but these days, man, I don't know. I don't know. We might be so disconnected that something like that will just drive us further into tribalism, you know. Um, I watch a lot of people like Michael Malice, and he's sort of a he calls himself an anarchist. I don't know how anarchist he actually is. He fancy he's very entertaining dude to listen to, but he talks about how like we can't reconcile our differences at this point. Like America's so divided that it is like we are two countries, and at some point there is going to be a national divorce where you'll have red states and they'll do their thing, and blue states and they'll do their thing, and I don't like that thought, man, because what will happen then is like inside of the red state America, inside of the blue state America, like those things will start to splinter as well. I mean, there's always going to be people who live life differently than you do and have different opinions than you do. And if you know, if like we're not meant to just be of one mindset all the time. That doesn't mean that we can't have appreciation for where we live, and that this wonderful country we live in allows us to have all of these different opinions and all of these different ways of life that you don't have to agree with. I don't
Correct.
have to agree with you. You don't have to agree with me. I just have to love you. That's what I have to do. That's my requirement. And that's how I choose to live my life. It's like I'm going to have love for everyone. And it's a very difficult thing sometimes to like, you know, to pray for people I disagree with, and not pray for them to see the light. That's not what I mean. I'm not praying for them to start seeing things my way. I mean, praying for people because you genuinely want the best for them, even if they don't want the best for you.
Right.
If that's how we should conduct ourselves. That's what America is about. That's what the world is about, you know? Um, so anyway,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
I'll
definitely
see.
don't know. But
Oh
I think
man,
this is a good episode. I know today we leave for Mansfield incarceration, so
incarceration headline show tonight.
yeah.
Yeah, it'll be oh, actually we've talked about it. I'm looking forward to seeing some people, man. We watched Parkway Drive the other night in at Rockfest in Wisconsin. What a great band, man. Like,
Yeah, they'll be there tonight.
yep,
Dropkick Murphys, who Barry and I like. Bad Omens,
yep.
Skillet.
Be a fun show, man. It'll be
Yeah.
good. And then we fly to California.
Yep. To do a
So
massive protest rally. It's gonna be awesome.
I'm protesting protest rallies. Actually, that's
I'm
what I
protesting the color red in the flag. I think it should be more barred red.
like your shirt.
Yeah.
More of a red orange.
But yeah, good episode.
Bye.
Deuces.